Hello everyone. I am Alice of KHR Arts and Cloud Orchid Publishing, and today we are going to talk about my experience at WindyCon 2023. So first things first, this is a very special convention for me. I have been going to it for several years now, and what makes it so special is that this is mine and Neal's anniversary convention. What this means is that it's a very special full circle experience for us in that we first met at WindyCon. And then we started having a relationship several years later at WindyCon. And so now we designate WindyCon as our official anniversary. So rather than having a date, we have this convention. And this year was no different. We celebrated our 2-year anniversary this year. It has been an absolutely wonderful ride, and I'm so here for all of the years ahead. But before I get too ahead of myself, Neal Litherland, aka the Literary Mercenary, is a fellow author. He has also been going to WindyCon for many years, and in the past we also both went to Capricorn and other various nerd and literary conventions and events. This year we found ourselves at a new hotel, the DoubleTree Inn in Oakbrook, and unfortunately this hotel was under renovation, but in all honesty, it was falling apart, y'all. It was really bad. Thankfully, me and Neal didn't have that bad of an experience at the hotel, but others had an absolute nightmare experience. We ran out of hot water for our shower on Sunday, where there was just no hot water coming out of the sink or the shower, and other people, they didn't have hot water for the entire weekend. There were also some people where they had water damage in their hotel rooms, including one author where the entire ceiling of their bathroom fell in, which is terrifying. The smoke alarm also apparently went off while we were at our anniversary dinner, so thankfully we missed that. And we were lucky that the sprinkler system wasn't triggered in our room, because it was triggered in a few other people's rooms, and all of their stuff was ruined and wet. So yeah, just a lot of disasters going on, but the worst of it that we personally experienced was the issues with the elevators. This was a compounded problem in that none of the escalators were working in the hotel, so more people had to use the elevators, which meant that there was a line every single time that you needed to use the elevator, and this means that it most impacted the disabled members of the convention who depend on the elevators and can't use escalators or stairs. So this meant a delay for everyone, and then a lot of people had to use the stairs, which meant that the stairs were very congested, and there were several people that fell because the stairs were really steep. And it was also awful that there were certain points in the convention that were not accessible via the stairs. So that meant that you still had to risk the elevator depending on where you were going. I actually did fall down the stairs. I was one of those people, as well as I am dynamically disabled with my hip dysplasia. So by the end of the convention, I was in a ton of pain from having to go up and down the stairs multiple times a day, every day of the convention. All of that was subpar. Everyone is unhappy with the hotel that WindyCon is currently home at. Hopefully, once the contract is up, they can find a better hotel, or this hotel can get its stuff together and be in proper working order by 2024. We'll see. WindyCon is the last convention for 2023 for me. It just worked out that way in that I did apply for a few events in December. However, unfortunately, they filled up really fast and I didn't make the cut. And I am still looking at conventions to sign up for 2024, as well as smaller events. But currently, 2024 is going to kick off with the Chicago Steampunk Expo in April. I am really glad that WindyCon is always on my docket. It's always been a really good convention for me. It's a better small to mid-size type of convention where it has really good attendance, but it's still on the larger side where you have panels and there's a lot of networking opportunities. This is a big part of the reason why I've continued to go to WindyCon even though attendance and sales have been down since the pandemic. Part of that is also that you never know when the upturn is going to come back, because this problem isn't unique to WindyCon. This is all across the board with all conventions, in that there was a very big dip in attendance and sales since the pandemic, and things are slowly but surely starting to turn around. This year's WindyCon was a bit of a mixed bag for me and my fellow vendors, in that Neal and I did fairly well. We did more sales than we did last year. Myself in particular, I did significantly more sales than last year. However, there were some other vendors that really didn't have very many sales. It was a bit scattered across the board, but overall, I did notice that there were more people attending WindyCon than there were last year. And if we can keep that trend going, we'll get back up to strong numbers in the very near future. I was also pleased that my new book, Succumb to Darkness, was well received at WindyCon. I have already debuted Succumb to Darkness at several other conventions this year, but WindyCon was the big convention that I was looking forward to seeing how my book would be received. Succumb to Darkness was published in May of 2023, so it hasn't been on the market for too long, but it is nearing the end of the year and nearing the end of the initial excitement period of about 3 to 6 months after a book is published, when you're most likely to get the most sales for it. I was really excited that I sold several copies of Succumb to Darkness, and in particular to new faces. I am always so grateful to my friends and my fans who support my work, but seeing new audiences pick up my books is always a slam dunk at a convention. So I hope those people that picked up Succumb to Darkness really enjoy the story, and even more so, fingers crossed, I hope everyone that picked up a copy will leave me a review, because those reviews are just the lifeblood of getting our books seen in the sea of books that is today. Preparing for a convention, no matter how big or small, is always a massive endeavor, and it was particularly difficult for me to prepare for WindyCon this year due to the new position that I'm working at. My job is a lot more demanding in terms of time spent each day, so I have far less time each day to be able to devote to literally anything else, whether it's cleaning or cooking or working on my writing or just anything. I only have about 2 to 3 hours per day to work on personal things, so that has been a struggle. And so I had to pack for WindyCon piece by piece throughout the week, and then finally on Thursday night and Friday morning, I was able to get the bulk of the packing done and be on my way. WindyCon is also nice in that it's a convention where things start a little bit later in the day than most conventions. A lot of conventions will start really early in the morning, some of them having the dealer's hall even open 24/7. I typically avoid those conventions just because that's a lot to ask of anyone, but it is typical for dealers' rooms to open anywhere from 7 a.m. to 9 a.m. But it was really nice that Friday, when the convention opened, that the dealer's room didn't open until noon. So that made our lives a lot easier with packing, getting out the door, getting organized, and then eventually getting to the dealer's hall to set up. And when I say open, it didn't open to the public, it opened to the vendors for load-in. So the fact that we had even more time after load-in started to just get ourselves together just was such a great grace period to have. What was nice is that the location of the convention was not very far from my house, so I didn't have far to drive, which gave me so much more time to be able to pack, get dressed, do my makeup, just all of that. And I also built in plenty of time for myself with driving there, making sure that if I ran into traffic or I got lost, that I wouldn't be running late. And then on top of it, also with the logistics of checking into the hotel and getting our stuff stuff up to the hotel room and all of that. So I had a lot of time built in on Friday to be able to get all of this stuff done. But as everybody knows, conventions go fast. So no matter how much time you build in, it's always never enough. It's never enough time. You can always use more time for preparation. Over the years, I have streamlined the process of packing for a convention in that it might seem, looking from the outside in, very strange the way that I choose to pack some of the things for conventions, some of the random bags of stuff that I have. It may seem like, why don't you just put it all in a bin or a suitcase or whatever so you don't have all these random bags that you have to carry in. But there is a method behind the madness in that doing this does help keep things organized and helps me with the overall process of packing and setting up for the convention. For example, I have a bag that is just all of the tablecloths for the booth, and then I have a bag that is just for all of the covers that we use to put over the booth when the dealer's hall is closed for the evening. And then I have another bag that is just for all of my display stuff. My little stand for my business cards, the stands for the books to display them, just all those things. Having these forms of separation is a little bit inconvenient for the packing process, as well as storing all that stuff between conventions. But ultimately, when it comes down to actually executing at the convention, it makes my life so much easier, especially since there are some conventions that give you a very limited amount of time to set up. Being streamlined in your process and being able to set up your booth as quickly as possible is a huge help, especially the bigger your setup is, the more streamlined you want your process to be so that you can get your booth set up in the least amount of time, because a lot of times people will still be setting up their booths after the dealer's hall opens, and then you can potentially lose out on sales or interest from people because you're still setting up and they don't feel comfortable looking at your wares because they feel like they're interrupting you. And of course, there are lessons learned with every convention, and WindyCon is no exception, in streamlining that process and just making attending and vending at a convention so much easier. And one of the things that I've taken away from my experience at WindyCon this year that I'm going to be implementing at events going forward, in particular multi-day events, is that there were some things that I accidentally left up at the hotel room that I needed initially the first day in the dealer hall, and then there were some things that I accidentally packed up in my car on Sunday that again I needed in the dealer hall. And then there were also things that I needed driving home that were packed up in the back of my car, such as my sunglasses, and it was a very bright day. It made driving home miserable. A thing that I'm going to implement is yet another bag that will be the beginning of the convention and end of the convention bag. And what that means is it's going to be the bag of essentials that I need to make sure that I have on me for the first day at the convention in the dealer hall, that I need on the last day with packing up, and that I definitely need in the car with me for driving home, because all of the objects that I needed for all three of those things were all the same things. I'm definitely going to make it where I'm going to have a designated bag that has specifically those things that are going to live in that bag for the duration of the convention so that I don't run into that problem again. And a big part of that is, again, just going through the convention, seeing where the hiccups are, and figuring out ways where we can work smarter, not harder. Another one of them was that we left our carts in the convention hall for the duration of the convention, but then that meant that checking out of our hotel room on Sunday was a little bit complicated and annoying, with having to take multiple trips down to the car for checkout, whereas if we had brought the carts back up with us Saturday night, that would have avoided that whole problem. So that's definitely a thing that we're going to do going forward. So it's just little things like that. You want to make a running list of the things that you notice when you're going through the convention process of how can I make this better? What would make my life easier? What was it that made my life more difficult doing the convention that could be better going forward? just figuring out all those fiddly little things is just going to make your overall convention experience so much better. A big piece of advice that I have that I learned in the past that has also made the convention process so much easier is having snacks. Even though WindyCon is one of those conventions that's really good about having a green room and a con suite with food and snacks and drinks available, it's still good to make sure that you also bring your own snacks to the convention, because you might run out of snacks. They might not have food or snacks that you want to eat or can eat. So just making sure that you bring your own food as well is a really good idea, because food at conventions in the surrounding area is oftentimes expensive, and especially if you're a vendor and or a panelist, the logistics of getting enough food throughout the day is difficult. And that was another thing that I actually shared with a fellow author who was vending at the convention, is use some sort of food delivery app. It's going to, again, streamline the process for you. It's ultimately going to be cheaper than going to one of the expensive restaurants nearby. It's going to save you time, and on top of it, the food goes to you. You don't have to go to the food. So we took advantage of that for lunch each day at the convention, where we had one of the food delivery apps where we had some cheap fast food get delivered to the hotel so that we were able to eat a proper meal, but able to do it quickly and cheaply. So I highly recommend doing that. A lot of people do go out to the restaurants for dinner. We went out to Wildfire for our anniversary dinner, which was absolutely wonderful. We had the best time. It was so sweet and so romantic, and it was really great to get away from all of the hoopla of the convention for a couple hours. But of course, there are a lot of people who are on a budget, and going out to a nice restaurant is not really a part of your plan. So even with dinner, you can do the delivery app. We've done that in the past at other conventions such as WorldCon, where we're tired, we're in the hotel room, and we just need food to come to us. That's definitely a good idea as well. And again, there are some people that do bring their own food to the convention, whether it's in the form of sandwiches or just like quick made food. But then you also have to make sure that you double check, does the hotel have refrigerators and microwaves in the room? Because unfortunately, we discovered that this particular hotel did not have microwaves and did not have mini fridges in the hotel room. So there was no way to store or heat up food at this convention, which was a huge inconvenience for a lot of the attendees. So make sure you double check that if you are planning on bringing your own food, because you might end up having no way to prepare your food and you might have nowhere to store it.
You are either...
Oh, person. I thought I waited long enough.
It's like, well, that was fun. Bye.
Bye. Is it still the same? Sorry.
Where you headed?
Down to one. Yeah. Sorry, we're trying so hard to get a different elevator to not bother you. But yes, as I said at the beginning, this was also mine and Neal's 2-year anniversary, which was just so special for us that it just feels like our relationship is in that nice, solid place where it's not a new relationship anymore. It's comforting. It's a comfortable relationship where we've been together for what feels like a long time now. We were friends for several years before that, and just being able to recognize that milestone in our relationship where we just feel like this is our lives and we're sharing it together is just such a beautiful thing. And sitting together at dinner and just talking about all sorts of things, just anything and everything, never running out of things to say, and just enjoying each other's company. It was just such a wonderful experience, and I'm just so grateful to have such a beautiful relationship with somebody who really truly not only cares about me, but gets me. having a fellow author as my partner, and not only that, having a fellow nerd and weirdo person as my partner just makes all the difference in the world, in that we enjoy a lot of the same things and we run in a lot of the same circles, and just all of that just makes our lives so much more enjoyable. There are certainly things that are different about us, in that Neal enjoys things like Warhammer 40k. Stuff like that isn't really my cup of tea, but then also I enjoy things like My Little Pony, and that's not really his cup of tea. But we both appreciate each other's interests that are different, in addition to the ones that are the same, such as that we both love tabletop gaming, that we both love nerd culture, that we both love dressing very differently than what's considered the mainstream fashion, the trendy fashion. We just kind of wear whatever we like, and oh well if anybody doesn't quite care for it. And just having that freedom to be ourselves, that we don't have to worry about the other one, how we're going to be perceived, or are you going to be embarrassed of me in public, or anything like that, because those are things I've experienced in past relationships, and it's just such a sad feeling. And the fact that I don't have to have those kind of feelings anymore is just so freeing and wonderful, and being able to just absolutely focus on each other and on ourselves and the things that we enjoy. And not only that, both of us gassing each other up, in that we both work really hard to not only help ourselves succeed, but to help us succeed together. There's so many things that the both of us do in order to help promote each other, in order to help each other to achieve our goals, and also just even in the small ways at conventions, helping each other to sell our books, because both of us had several panels at the convention, which means that for the most part on Saturday, we didn't see each other until dinner, because we were playing tag at the booth, where one person comes back from a panel, the other one has to leave for a panel. And so making sure that we gave equal opportunity to both of our sets of books to equally sell our books is just so important, that there is just no selfishness with our success, that both of us want the other to succeed so fully is just so important in a relationship. Even if your partner isn't in the same industry as you, supporting their work and rooting for their success is just so important in a relationship. And I don't understand people that don't support their partner's work. And I have been there, where I've had very unsupportive partners. And not so much that they were trying to be a detriment to my success, but the fact that they just didn't care, that they didn't see it as a priority, or even some of them thought that it was stupid. And having somebody that is actively rooting for your success just makes all the difference, and honestly helps you to build on that success. So I'm just very lucky to just have such a wonderful person in my life who encompasses all of those qualities. Load-in is over there.
Yes.
So that's good to remember. Do you know where that is in relation to where the car is?
Yes, car is that way.
Okay.
This is just past the main entrance.
Okay, cool.
Do you want me to take keys and just pull up car?
No, it's okay. We wanted to figure out where badges are first. I don't know where badges are.
Probably.
What is that?
That is.
Maybe ask them. Do they know where badges are? Huh?
The other side of the lobby is where they have consuites and where they're doing badges, but they don't know if they're at the end.
Okay.
So do you want to go look?
Yeah. Let's look, and then, whatever.
We can go back.
Yep, whatever the results are. And in part of preparing for the convention, with our dinner reservation for that anniversary dinner, we did make sure to get that reservation a week before the convention. And I'm so glad that we did, because there were other author couples who did want to go out for a nice romantic meal. And they said that the wait time for a lot of the restaurants nearby was anywhere from an hour to an hour and a half. So that's also part of the planning process with streamlining your convention experience. Is if you do want to go out with your partner or even with a group of friends or whatever, and it's a nicer sit-down restaurant, make sure you make reservations in advance, especially in convention style areas, because a lot of times they're close by a mall or some sort of shopping center, and you're going to have to compete with not only everybody at the convention, but also everybody that's out for a nice Friday or Saturday night. And when we went to our reservation, it was honestly chaos. There were so many people who were just waiting for a table, and the fact that we only had to sit for about 5 minutes before our table was ready and we were able to just go straight back. Making sure that you do that planning in advance will really help streamline your process and just make everything run smoother without any stress. And what we did was we set a radius for here's where the hotel is. We don't want to go too far away from the hotel. And we looked at, okay, which restaurants are in this radius and which one of them are both in our budget, as well as a restaurant that we both are going to really enjoy. So just taking that time to do that extra planning is going to be so helpful in the long run. And I know that if you are operating as a group of people rather than just a couple, more people means more problems and makes planning that difficult. But if you can swing it, it just makes it so much easier, and you're not going to waste all of that time waiting on a table when you can just have a reservation and pop in.
Right back that way on the right hand side.
Perfect. You go first.
Okay.
Yeah, you know where we're going. I don't. Going to the place. And with timing is so key with attending a convention, and especially working as both a vendor and a panelist, and having all of that organized in advance is also a big part of my process. As you notice in this video, I wear several different outfits. I have elaborate makeup looks that I put together, and all of that takes planning, in that I plan out my outfits in advance for the convention. That's why it took me the week to pack for the convention. It was deciding on which outfits do I want to wear for which days, what are all the components of those outfits that I need, planning out, okay, what does that makeup look like, how is that going to jive with the other outfits that I want to wear, because even though it's just Friday, Saturday, and Sunday, it's not just 3 outfits. For me, anyway. For some people, a lot of people will have just standard outfits that they wear for the duration of the weekend, but for me, it is multiple costume changes. And a big part of that is because of the convention parties, the after parties that you go to after the dealer's hall closes and most of the panels are done for the day, as well as I wanted to wear a nicer, more quote-unquote normal outfit going out to our romantic dinner. So that was a lot of outfits that I had to coordinate, and then also planning out how much time that I needed to be able to get into those outfits for each section of the day, timing out what time does the dealer's room open and close, what time do we need to be at dinner, about what time do we want to go out to the parties. Just planning out all of that is a lot, and making sure that I had all of that planned out with the packing process in advance made that a lot easier. And I always make sure that I bring an extra outfit or two just in case for whatever reason I'm not feeling a particular outfit and I want to wear something different that day, or if I don't know, insert disaster here happens with an outfit or something. It makes it a lot easier to have 1 or 2 backup outfits as well, just to make sure that you're not suddenly SOL with not having anything to wear and maybe having to wear something that you already wore. And especially with a convention, you don't want to do that because of sweating. You're going to do a lot of sweating at a convention with just running around and all of the logistics and all of the stress. And that's also part of why I have multiple costume changes a day, is because you don't want to be the smelly person at the convention. And especially, as some people pointed out, with there not being hot water in a lot of the hotel rooms, that kind of deterred some people from wanting to take a shower, and then having sweaty clothes on top of it just makes it so much worse. So even those kind of disasters aside, it's just good to have different costume changes because it just helps you to kind of transition through the different parts of the day of the convention and just helps to refresh you and re-energize you going into the next part of your convention experience. And part of that process for me is putting like and like together. I try to make sure that if I am going to go from the dealer's hall to one of the parties, I want to make sure that the outfits are not too far apart in styling, in that I don't have to do a full scrub my face and completely redo my makeup, because that can take anywhere from an hour to 3 hours depending on how complicated the makeup look is, as well as I want to see if there are ways that I can also make the components of the outfit easier. And one of the ways that I do that is I have my party outfits are far simpler than my dealer's hall outfits, because throughout the day I want to make sure that my flashiest outfits are the ones that I wear to the dealer's hall and panels, because then that attracts people to approach me and talk to me, and most importantly be interested in my books, because I've already drawn them in with being interested in my outfit. Whereas with the parties, I don't want to wear anything too elaborate because, one, I have to change out of my dealer's hall outfit, and the less time that I spend changing my makeup and changing my clothes, the better, as well as the parties are oftentimes crowded. You don't want to have a big bulky outfit that's going to take up too much room and make it difficult for you to maneuver around the room and maneuver around different parties. And on top of this, putting this all together, a big cheat that I use in order to make my life so much easier is that I exclusively wear wigs to conventions. I don't wear my natural hair to conventions because then that's one less thing that I have to worry about. My hair is curly. It's a looser curl, and having to worry about, is my hair going to behave itself today, especially with all that running around and sweating and everything. It can get very frizzy and it will just look very unkempt, and not having to worry about trying to style it, because styling hair takes far longer than doing makeup for me. So just putting on a wig and calling it a day and instantly looking put together and beautiful just takes an entire piece of the process out for me and saves me a lot of time and a lot of hassle. So finding those cheats that you can use for your own looks at the conventions, what are ways that you can streamline it and just make it easier, absolutely do those things. I've also streamlined the components of what I bring for all of these outfits and makeup and such, in that I used to bring far more stuff to conventions, and a big part of that was because I was operating under, but what if I need it? And because I've gotten so used to this process, doing these conventions since 2018, and even doing conventions far before that, I've been attending conventions since my high school days. But attending conventions as a vendor is far different than attending conventions as just an attendee. And now I know that I don't need quite as much stuff as I used to think that I did. For example, I used to bring my entire makeup train case. And for those of y'all that don't know what that is, it is a large suitcase looking thing that you can carry a ton of makeup in. And just thinking to myself, I don't need all of my makeup. I don't need every single makeup item that I own to come with me to the convention. And planning out my outfits the way that I do now really helps streamline that process, in that now I can look at the outfits that I'm bringing and ask myself, what actual makeup components do I need in order to make these outfits happen? And maybe taking, an extra thing or two just in case we get a little crazy. But definitely I don't need to bring my entire makeup case anymore, and now I bring a much smaller, like handheld sort of makeup case that just has all of the essentials that I need in order to make my looks happen. This also means that there is less stuff taking up space in the car, which is quickly becoming a problem as I exponentially write more books, which means I have to transport more books. And I have realized that in the near future, in a couple of years, I'm probably going to have to invest in a trailer just with how many books I'm going to need to bring to conventions. But being able to streamline my personal effects of what I need to physically bring to the convention does help alleviate that problem a little bit in the interim, in that I'm not bringing as many suitcases and bags and cases and things. And taking that into consideration too with going to conventions is important, is thinking to yourself, do I need this? Do I need to bring this? How much space is this going to take up when I'm packing my car that is limiting me on other things that I really do need to bring to the convention? I am lucky in that I have a Jeep. I have it for the explicit purpose of hauling all of my stuff to conventions, making sure that I have a vehicle that has a very large trunk space where I can put lots of stuff in it. But that also limits that I can only bring myself and one other person to a convention, because that's all there is room for in my vehicle, because I put the seats down in the back and I fully fill up the entire back of my car with everything that I need to bring to the convention. That's also a balance that you have to strike with yourself, is how many bodies do you need to transport to the convention on top of how much stuff do you need to transport to the convention. So just keeping all these different logistics in mind is so crucial to planning for attending a convention. And let me tell you, having more vehicles is typically better, just so that you can safely transport everyone and everything. Neal and I typically take our own separate cars to conventions because logistically it's just easier, since we live about 2 hours away from each other. That would just be a commuting nightmare. But then also on top of it, it means that both of us have more space in our respective vehicles for our own personal stuff that we have to bring to the convention. And that is a thing that you will see at conventions, is that there are a lot of people that do have hitched trailers hitched up to the back of their SUV or their truck. And there are even people that have cargo vans and cargo trucks that they bring to conventions, just because they have so much stuff as a vendor that they have to bring, especially if they have a very large, elaborate setup. Like we're not even dealing with tables anymore. We're dealing with an entire built-up booth setup. So knowing what exactly you need in order to have your convention experience, and having all of the logistics of your transportation and space and all of that is just so important to keep in mind, because you would be surprised at how many times I've heard stories of people where it didn't occur to them that all the stuff that they need to bring doesn't fit in their car, or it didn't occur to them that they can't fit all the people they need to bring and all the stuff they need to bring in their car, because the more people that you bring to the con means more stuff that comes with those people. So all of that is important to keep in mind with the logistics of all the people and all the things that you have to transport. And sometimes taking separate transportation is just the way to go. And with the whole planning out what all you need to bring to the convention, that brings me to the next part of my process, which is book inventory, which I do before the convention and after the convention. And I technically do book inventory twice before the beginning of the convention. The first time that I do book inventory is usually at least a month before the convention, and I do that to make sure, do I have enough copies of all of my books to sell at the convention? And I know this sounds like Captain Obvious, like of course you need to make sure that you have enough stuff to sell at the convention, but then you would be surprised the people that do it last minute and then their books don't arrive in time, and then they sell out of books faster than they wanted to, and they spend half the convention with nothing to sell. And there is nothing more frustrating than being at a convention where your entire purpose of being there is to sell things and you don't have things to sell. So I make sure that I do book inventory to see how many books do I need to order in time for the convention, and you need to make sure that you give yourself enough time to order them and for them to arrive, especially with there are still supply chain issues and there can be delays with deliveries and all that. So make sure you give yourself ample time for the books to actually ship and arrive to you, and so that you can check and make sure that everything arrives, because a lot of times the orders will be broken up and you'll receive like a stack of books here, a stack of books there over the course of a week. So make sure that you give yourself enough time with everything to ship out. I then do book inventory again about, I would say, a week before the convention, and this is so that I can sit down and actually price out my books. So sit down, cut out little labels, and put the prices on all the books, and make sure that the books are packed up properly so that they are safe for transport, and so that everything is as neat and tidy as possible.
What doing?
This is quite possibly the dumbest accessory I own.
What is it?
It is a tactical pen.
I love that.
You can put key in. Boop. It's a Kubotan.
I don't know what that is.
It's a tool for hitting pressure points.
Oh, that's neat.
Yeah, but also he's a pen.
He's paying.
Because you can save a lot of space with what you're packing in your vehicle if you pack things properly, rather than just throwing them into a container and being off on your way. A little hack that I have found with doing that in transporting my books in these large bins that I have is I actually save the packaging from when I order other personal stuff for myself, so like the bubble wrap and all that, and I use that in the bins to put around my books so that they don't get bent in transport. I highly recommend doing that. It's a huge help and will absolutely save you from bent books. And that's the other thing too, is I am actually going to be re-examining the structure of how I pack up all of my books, because I am becoming more disabled as the years go by, especially with all of my shoulder dislocations. It's becoming very difficult for me to transport my books because the bins are just so heavy, because I just have so many books to transport. So I am going to be looking into having more smaller bins to transport my books in. So I am going to be exploring the logistics of that between now and my first convention in 2024. And that's a thing that you have to examine for yourself as well, is what are you physically capable of when it comes to attending a convention, the actual nitty-gritty logistics of it. What is the heaviest amount that you can safely lift for yourself? What is the logistics of transporting that thing from wherever it's stored in your house to putting it in your vehicle to taking it from your vehicle into the convention hall and back again? Because all of that is a lot of wear and tear on your body, and you're going to be way more tired than you think you are, especially at the end of the convention. Investing in a cart was one of the most important things that I could have done with this part of the process, in not having to actually carry bins, but just putting them in a cart and then transporting them from the car into the convention hall that way. Especially with some conventions, the load-in area can be pretty far away from the actual dealer's hall proper, especially if they have you go through like the back caterer area of the hotel. Having transportation items like a cart will make your life so much easier, and I say this in so many of my videos, is if you haven't already gotten a cart, go buy one right now. It will change your life. Absolutely go get one. And it's also great for doing check-in, just schlepping all of your stuff up to your room, just throwing it in the cart too. Carts are great. Go buy a cart. This isn't even like a sponsored thing or anything, just absolutely cart is required for doing a convention. But also the logistics of how do you pack up all of your stuff? Do you put them in plastic bins? Do you keep them in the original cardboard boxes that they were shipped to your house in? Pro tip, don't do that for so many reasons. What exactly are you transporting them in order to have them arrive safely and then make them easy to transport to and from the convention? All of that is stuff that you need to think about, but it's a lot of the background nitty-gritty stuff that a lot of people don't really consider. I saw a fellow author vendor at the convention who is also disabled, who had a magnificent setup for this, and honestly, I think I might look into something like this, in that they had bins that were interlocking, and they interlock into a dolly. So it's like all one piece, but it's modular so that you can unhook them, but they all stack up together, and I was like, this is brilliant. this is the most amazing thing that I've ever seen. However, for me, because I have so many books I have to transport, I would need like 3 or 4 of those, and I don't think all of that is going to fit in my car. But it was definitely an awesome option to see and consider because it made their process of setting up and breaking down just an absolute breeze. I was so impressed. Definitely think about the logistics of what exactly it looks like packing up your books, packing up the books in their containers into your vehicle, and then transporting them in your cart from your vehicle to the dealer's hall. What does that whole process look like? What are the pain points for you that make that difficult or exhausting or potentially hurt yourself or potentially hurt the books? And the reason why I say don't carry in your books in the cardboard boxes they came in is because they fall apart. They fall apart and you're more likely to have bent books. And weather. I can't tell you how many conventions I've done where load in or load out, it has rained or snowed. And cardboard is not going to protect your books. And having your books sit in wet cardboard in your car while you're driving home, especially if you're at a convention that's out of state, so it's a several-hour drive home, yeah, you don't want to keep your books in the cardboard boxes that they came in. You definitely want to have some sort of plastic container that is going to protect them from the elements. It's so much better, and then on top of it, it's a built-in storage so that when you have to store them at your house, it just is so much easier to store them, makes so much more sense, protects them better. Just please, please, please don't use the cardboard boxes that they come in. It's just a bad idea all around.
Oh, there we go. Figured it out. Look at me go.
The last thing that I want to leave y'all with doing conventions like this is the networking opportunities, as well as presenting yourself as a professional in the industry. Doing panels and going to the networking events like the parties is just such an important part of the convention experience, and also such an important way to build up your brand as an author. I absolutely swear by it. And even though it makes my life so much more complicated with doing both panels and working as a vendor, and then also having, no matter how tired I am, at least making an appearance at the parties after the dealer's hall closes, it makes all the difference, because I met several new authors and readers this year at WindyCon, and I am so grateful for those connections, because I really do think they are going to be valuable going into the future. And the reason for this is that it's important to learn from other people in the industry, but then it's also important to have people that have your back, that are going to speak highly of your name behind closed doors that you're not in. You know what that made me think of?
Is makeup with peel off. Glue the eye feathers to your eyes.
It reminds me of something my mother would always say. If you cannot say something nice, say something cool.
There have been days where, like, I do my makeup and just nothing is going right, and I'm mad at everything, and I just end up looking like Peel Off at the end of that video, where it's like, now you are a beautiful butterfly, and it's like, there has been a mistake. What happened? Why do I look like a train wreck? I look like a very weird clown.
They call the railroad crossings going on.
And what I mean by that is there was an author that I met at the convention. Her name was Donna J. Munro, and she is primarily a horror writer. She has some dystopian fiction novels. They had really fun premises. I absolutely suggest checking her out. I also met a new author by the name of K.V. Peck. And making these kind of connections is important at conventions, because you never know who might help you with something, and you never know who you might help. So with Donna, it made my entire convention. It meant so much to me. One of the panels that we were on together was the self-publishing panel, and we were talking about branding, and she looked over at me and said, not just to me, but to the whole audience, this is the best branding I have ever seen. In talking about that, I utilize my physical appearance as part of my branding, that I am very recognizable at a convention. Even if you don't know who I am, it's very easy to spot me from across the room, because I always make sure that I have very elaborate outfits and cosplays on throughout the convention experience, which, again, as I said earlier, draws people to my booth and eventually draws them in to be willing to listen to my book pitches. And she's right in that branding yourself is so important as an author, and making yourself memorable, because that's how you're able to draw people in to be interested in your books. Whatever that type of branding looks like for you, that's just how I personally do it. But to have somebody recognize that and say that, not just to me, but to the entire panel audience, was just absolutely amazing. And I am forever grateful for that, and it warmed my heart. It was an amazing thing to hear, and so validating. And she's also a very experienced and accomplished author, and I learned so much from listening to her talk about her publishing experiences and her experiences with her book series. And that's the other thing, is that even being a panelist yourself, there is so much that you can learn from your fellow panelists, and that's why it's important to engage in these parts of the conventions. And then with KV Peck, it was not only her first convention, but she had just newly published her very first novel. And we were all very excited for her because that is such an exciting place to be in your career, is right at the beginning. You're learning, you're meeting people, you're networking, and we were all just so excited for her. And you could just feel the energy radiating off of her, of just how excited she was to be there, how she was just a sponge, just absorbing all this information from everybody. And that's what I love about the communities that I've met in this industry, is that there are just so many people that are so willing to help and just have you be a part of things. I feel like it's really the old guard mentality of seeing everyone as your competition and not wanting to help people. I really feel like the newer communities in the writing industry are very much pro helping people. And even though technically speaking, other authors are your competition, in the grand scheme of things, they're not. Because everybody is doing their own thing. Everybody has their own unique audiences. Everyone has their own unique way of marketing their books. Your greatest competition truly is yourself, in that you should always be doing better each convention, each year, with building your strategy for yourself and your books. Worrying about what other authors are doing and how that impacts you is very silly, because it doesn't really impact you. Whether or not KV Peck becomes a wildly successful best-selling novelist is not going to impact my books one way or the other. It's not going to magically help me make sales, and it's not going to be a detriment to my sales either. Not just because we write in completely different genres, but just the bubbles that we live in now, with that there are literally over 1 million books published each year. New books. Just completely new stories out there that we're all kind of in these weird isolated bubbles where the difficulty is having readers find you in the first place. And that's why other authors really aren't your competition, is because we're all drifting about in our own bubbles. And if we can bring our bubbles together to help each other, that in the long run is just going to help both of us. It's not going to be a detriment to each other or anybody else. So make sure that you go into conventions with that mentality of, other authors are here to help you. They are not here to hurt you. But it was just so interesting that both of them kept popping up, in that we were, all three of us, on a lot of the same panels. And even if we weren't, we ended up attending at least a lot of the same panels, as well as Donna was hosting her own after party at the convention, which Neal and I stopped by for a while, and that was very fun. Definitely go check out their works. I'll put their information in the description below, but absolutely do gas up other authors, because you never know who might be speaking your name behind closed doors that you're not a part of, and you want to make sure that the words they're speaking are good ones. So I hope y'all enjoyed this video. Thank you so much for watching. If you like this video, please be sure to give it a like, and if you're new, subscribe. All right, y'all, thank you so much. Take care. Bye-bye.